Collectively, baby boomers play an unusually pivotal role in our economy. They represent around 20% of the population, but over half of the wealth. What happens when all that wealth gets transferred to younger generations? According to social demographer Mark McCrindle, advisors, brokers, and investment managers may need to change their approach.
Mark, we hear a lot about intergenerational wealth and that it's increasing at a really fast rate. Talk to us about what your research shows in terms of what intergenerational wealth means and how it's going to play out.
Well, what we're talking about there is a massive generation, the baby boomers. There's more than 5 million of them in Australia. They're a fifth of the population. So they're a sizable demographic block in this nation. But they're an even bigger economic block in this nation because they have accumulated wealth at a greater rate than any generation that has gone before. So we're talking about 5 million people in our population that own $5 trillion in national private wealth. So that's their demographic footprint, but their economic footprint is half of the wealth in Australia. So in other words, their economic ownership is more than twice as large as their demographic representation. That's the generation we're talking about. That's the wealth that's about to be transferred.
Okay, so your research shows that the intergenerational wealth transfer is not playing out as most people expected.
Well, that's right. There was a lot of talk that, look, these 55 to 74-year-old Australians, sure, they've got a lot of wealth, but they're going to need that for their retirement. They're going to go on trips. They're going to buy new cars. They're going to need that for retirement living and aged care down the track. But if we go back 10 years and look at what happened to the money from the previous generation, actually, it continued to grow. Their nest egg increased. And so they didn't spend it on themselves. They ended up having that to be able to pass on. And that's even more the case with the baby boomers, because if we look at that wealth and where it sits, it's in property, it's in investments, it's in superannuation, and all of that has been growing. So what's remarkable is when we look back over a decade ago, the wealth held by older Australians was $3 trillion. Now it's $5 trillion. So rather than being spent or diminished, it's actually grown as a nest egg.
Estate planning for most Australians used to be relatively simple in the past, but your research shows that it's not that simple anymore. It's actually quite complex. Talk to us about how intergenerational wealth is playing out.
Well, our households are far more intergenerational. The relationships between older parents and their children is far more collaborative. You're right. It used to be that there was virtue in saving as much as you could, in spending in retirement as little as you could, and then passing all of that on in estate planning at the end. That's not how it is now. We've got people that are active later in life. They're working later. They're connecting. They've got the kids staying at home a lot later, and they're actually helping their children a bit more. So a lot of that wealth is being passed on, if you like, through interactions, through supporting the children. It's more of an ongoing connection with wealth and the generation and their children and grandchildren than it's ever been before. From grandparents helping on the school fees to helping support as they save for a deposit to sometimes even going guarantors or going in that investment with the children. It's far more interactive than we've ever seen the generational interactions before.
Investment managers and advisors obviously play a pivotal role in the transfer of wealth between the generations. Based on what you've observed, what can you share with them and what should they be taking into consideration when they're giving advice?
Well, to recognise that while they have the individual or maybe the couple there, that is the client, there is the family around them that is key. That parents today, whether they be baby boomers or Gen Xers, are far more empathetic to the plight of their children. They know their children are starting their earnings later, cost of living is greater, getting in property is harder, and that's why there's a lot more of those intertwined arrangements between the older generation and the next. Recognise that complexity and that aspiration that they have to help their children. And secondly, understand that it's not just about having a nest egg that is passed on one day. We've got active generations that want to share that money in a relational and ongoing way. They want to see benefit for the children. It's not about one day when I'm gone, it's now, and investing and using that money actively for the next generation and beyond. For charities and other concerns that they have as well, they're far more hands-on and will be a lot more later in life than we've ever seen before.